where basically I open up the new strategic plan and introduce it to everyone. This is a little bit different from what we've done in the past, and I'll come to that in a minute. So look, I want to acknowledge all of the First Nation people in this beautiful world that we live in, and recognise their close connection with country, community and culture. The purpose of this is to really engage with all staff members around this new strategic plan, which has been some time in the making and happens amidst a really interesting time that we find ourselves in, one which is full of challenges. So I'll go through the pillars. I'll take the document as read, and you haven't had the chance to do so, please do so. It's about 4 pages long, shouldn't take too long. So in this session, I'll discuss some of the pillars. I do want to emphasize this is a different process we've used from previous years, and the plan that we've come up with this time is actually quite different to previous plans, and that reflects the environment that we operate in. It also, I think, reflects basically a whole range of challenges which we try and sort of tie up in, say, 5 pillars. And I reckon the most sort of connection that all of those pillars have is with the central one, which is really about sustainability. Sustainability doesn't mean that we are in a bad financial position. We're actually in a good one, but as directors, we need to keep it that way. And so you will have seen, I just spent a bit of time telling you what we've done over the last 4 years. I think someone might not have themselves on mute. If you could just please do that, I would be very grateful. And so over the last 4 years since I've arrived at this organisation, we've done a lot of things. And so we've done a lot of things at the board level. And first and foremost is to get the right directors with the right skills on the board. And so we've spent a lot of energy doing that. And we're very happy with where we landed. And so whenever we do have vacancies come up, we do look for skills-based directors. And so having operated in the not-for-profit sector now for the last 15 years, leading organisations, this is not a common thing, okay? So skills-based directorships absolutely have been seen as a key aspect of commercial for-profit organisations. Those are always involved in about generating revenue. Now, equally as applicable to the not-for-profit space, okay? And you'll see that as I talk about fee-for-service revenue in this new strategic plan, being commercial and being sensible and being skills-based about the way we do things, there's nothing dirty about that. There's nothing wrong about that. And in fact, organisations who are not-for-profits, who are not doing this type of transformation, are falling by the wayside and they will fail. So the whole system is getting more challenging and we need to adapt basically, and that is where this strategic plan is coming from. Now, what will happen after these sessions is that my executives, led by Karen Shearer, will work with staff to generate what's called an organisational annual plan. This will reflect our ambitions, and that is something that we can take to board, monitor our progress against this plan with, and so on. All right, now, if anyone's got any questions, I don't mind when they come, so you can either raise your hand or you can put it in chat. I'll leave my little chat pane open. And you don't have to write the question in there. If you just say, I've got a question, I'll refer to you and you can just say it out. Now, I just want to talk briefly about Community United Country Housing. So this is a community housing organisation. I want you to keep it in perspective because we are what's called a Tier 2 community housing organisation. That means we're not big, we're not tiny, we're somewhere in the middle. Okay, so we've got 265 houses across our footprint, and we do have a development pipeline. And so we've already built one affordable housing outcome in Moonta. We've got a couple on the boil in Kadina now, where we bought some land, been given some land in Laura. Chris Kennett is working with the Laura Council to see what they want built on that land. But again, it'll be affordable housing. And we bought some land in Port Augusta. So I think really in terms of what we can do as a housing organisation, I think it's really important that the staff recognise that, hey, look, we're not one of those big beasts like Unity, okay? So they've got tens of thousands of houses. They can leverage their finance against those against that property and borrow big sums of money. They can build fancy places in one spot, flog it off into the market, use that money to come back in to build social and affordable housing. And so that's how that system works. We're a minor player in that, and I just want you to keep that in perspective. Still, I've got a lot of admiration for my staff in that organisation, because we've also come through a lot of difficult times where, you know, the Office of the Housing Regulator has been too impressed with the way we've been doing things. And over the last 5 years, that's come really together, and we're no longer under close scrutiny. We handle things well, and we really hope to continue that path. So we want to, as part of this strategic plan, we want to leverage and build the brand of Uniting Country Housing, because so far we've really only focused on Uniting Country SA. And as we build more houses, they will really be affordable houses, because our whole stock, if you like, of housing is really tilted to one side. It's really in those high maintenance, high cost housing where, you know, it runs on the sniff of an oily rag anyway. What you see in most community housing organisations is they have some balance to what they do. So they have a fair whack of affordable housing and then the social stuff as well, okay? And that's where we're planning to go. But as I say, look, we're a pretty small organisation and our development pipeline's modest. But, you know, it is, it's a happening thing. The first pillar is really future ready. And I keep talking about this changing landscape that we find ourselves in. But it's really challenging. So if we want to continue delivering our mission to care for country people, we have to be not only ready for the change, but we have to have a mental switch that says we need to change the way we do things in order to be successful into the future, in order to be an organisation that's still around in 100 years' time. So my invitation is to every staff member is to be part of this organisational plan, is to be open to change, to be open to developing your skills. And I really talk about future ready in a whole range of ways, because professional development is one of the themes that flows through this plan. But part of what that looks like is really about using artificial intelligence, artificial general intelligence systems. And so really, I'm talking about for our organisation, Copilot. And so if you're finding yourself at the end of your working week, you've still got stuff left over that perhaps ought to have been done, give it a go. I think, you know, we've been trying to encourage people to certainly uptake this technology. I find it really useful because it frees up time for me in my working week to think critically and strategically about the things that we do and the things that I do in my work. Okay, and so I have invested playing around with the Copilot for 2 to 3 hours a week for at least a year now. And so I find myself able to get through the work that I need to meet my deadlines, and then have breathing room above that. That's where I want you all to get to, because basically the whole system is changing. We're getting less money for the sorts of services that we used to provide. So we're providing the same service and government's going, we want you to do this for less. And a really good example of that is the financial wellbeing tender that we continue to win across 3 of those services, but less money. And so, you know, this is a common theme. So the residential care tender, that's not out yet in terms of results. There's less money there than we had in the past. And so sometimes that means staff changes and reducing staff numbers. Now, from my perspective, that restructure stuff is done and dusted, okay? So you don't need to worry about that anymore. But what I really want you to do is to be an active part of this strategic plan, to bring your best self to work and to go, right, in order for us to be surviving into the future, we need to think about doing things differently. And so, you know, quite often I'll challenge my team and when I hear words similar to the effect of, that's the way we've always done it. We can't continue doing things the way we've always done it. We need to look for new ways to improve the client outcomes, to improve the organisation's sustainability. And this is happening across everywhere. We're not the only ones. And having a forward-thinking, skills-based board is one that looks to the future and prepares us for those challenges. And that is very much what this plan is all about. So that future ready aspect of it is about developing our capability and our capacity to deal with the challenges that we continue to find. And these challenges not going anywhere soon. The next challenge, or the pillar, if you like, and everything's a challenge these days, but influence. Now, we start from a really good place in relation to this. We are highly regarded amongst our funding bodies, amongst the communities in which we operate, and this is really good. And so we are perfectly placed as, we're a fair-sized organisation. We got about 400 staff, 190 volleys. We turned over a bit over $62 million last year. So we're not a small fry. And so we want to stay as an influential, well-run, forward-looking, a well-operated organisation that does its mission, it cares for country people, does a good job. But these are challenging times. So I need your help in order to implement this plan. And that's why this whole sort of approach, which previously has gone through the management line, is I'm coming direct to you, through the managers, staffies, those at the coalface. Everyone's in the same boat here. So my appeal to you is help us implement this plan, because this will ensure that we are a sustainable organisation in the future and that we continue to care for country people. Now, one of the things about having influence is a concept I'd like to expand upon, and that is about place-based services or place-based designs. Now, it's really easy for decision makers who live in the metropolitan area where you've got a mishmash of lots of people jammed into a similar sort of geographic area to think that those sort of rules or similar rules apply in the country. And as we know, it doesn't. It's a really different kettle of fish out here. So we've got a really broad area that we cover, and we've got lots of individual, unique communities within that. And they're often characterized by the employers, like us in those sites, but more importantly, it's about the people. Okay, it's about the individuality and unique stories of the people whom we impact, the people whose impact is on the community that they live in. And this is something that tends to get lost when government sort of aggregate data together. Hell, let's look at the country all at once, squish it all in together, aggregate the data. You lose all of that individuality. Myself and other proponents of the country environment continue to advocate that doing business in the country is different. It's a lot different from the metro. But however, we've got 90% of the population in that metro area. We've got about 10% in country, and we don't have as many decision makers. We don't have as much political representation. And the fact is, we don't have as much clout as we should. So help me on this journey. I'm really interested in hearing from each and every one of you in terms of having any ideas. And so I'll skip to the innovation pillar because I want to save sustainability for last. So what I'm really interested in the next four to 5 years under this plan is to hear about ideas that we can use to either refine and improve our service delivery or to generate new fee-for-service revenue. And so part of this whole mind shift that's required in this new challenging environment is to not think about commercial profit as simply in the profits of private organizations. We are looking to make revenue so that we can decide what we do with those funds in the interests of caring for country people. I honestly get a bit frustrated with government contracts sometimes, the way they are so prescriptive and they sort of dictate to us what we need to do in the interests of our community. And as we know, sometimes those programs fall short of the mark. Either don't give enough quantum so we can have enough people on the ground to help everyone who needs it. The Domestic Family and Violence Service is one good example of that, is where we're just like ducks paddling away under the water and we're trying our best, and the only ones that we can help are those at the very highest security levels. So I'm really genuinely interested in those ideas. Now, in the past, people have just shot those ideas to me, and I don't mind that. But I think what a better way to do this is to go through the line, the organisational line. So if you have an idea, strongly encourage you to discuss that with your line manager and to tease it out a bit. And then if it's, if it's an idea that's got legs, it will go up to the next level. It'll undergo a bit more refinement. So by the time it gets to, say, the strategic leadership team, or it gets to a point where it needs to go to board, it's got all the elements that, my board would expect that a paper would have. It's what's the purpose, what are the risks, what's the financial analysis, what's the context in which it occurs, what is your recommendation, all of those details which really matter and which are important to a skills-based board applying the lens of this strategic plan over that paper and going, right, we think we should invest in that. Because again, it aligns with the mission. And so strongly encourage that. Please do that. I'll just cover the final one is optimal delivery before we flip back. And this is really in a pretty similar space. We are forced to do more with less. We want to see how we can improve the client journey and client outcomes with the tools that we've got. And so that is really being about being agile and nimble in the way we do things, being open to change. I think that is absolutely key. No organization in this world hangs around forever by doing the same stuff over and over again. It doesn't work that way. These are challenging times. Things are changing. We need to adapt accordingly. And please, Ashi, join me on that journey. I want to spend the majority of the last little bit of this time on sustainability, because again, this is really core to where we've landed on this strategic plan. We see these are difficult times. We see reduced funding in terms of, I've talked about the financial well-being, residential care. They're just two examples. The funding levels aren't going up, but expectations remain the same from those funding bodies. Looking towards sustainability doesn't mean we're on our last 2 cents, okay? We're not. And it is very important in order to be able to provide an overall structure that supports the training and development of our staff. We need to be profitable. We need that. We can't do it by spending and then being on our last 2 dimes and then thinking about changing. So as a board, we'll be very proactive about this. And we want to place this organisation so it is well placed to be surviving 100 plus years into the future, employing country people who are caring for country people. There have been a few policies which have shaped this as well. Coming out of the Department of Social Services, a lot of you might have been aware that there's a policy to transfer services which target majority or significant Aboriginal populations to be delivered by ACCOs, right? And so, we certainly operate in that space. So I think that's a good policy. So we saw Connecting Beginnings transition to an ACCO in Port Augusta some years back. We're seeing HIPPY is undergoing a similar process. We're not quite at the end of that process yet, but certainly the organisation that's doing that review for government is calling for expressions of interest from ACCOs in Port Augusta around that. Now, this is not to say that those programs like Connected Beginnings and HIPPY that we've held, we've done an awesome job in those, okay? But there are some policies that we just got no chance of fighting. And so where we have made a change in this is we partnered with KWY to deliver our Communities for Children program in Port Augusta. So collectively, we split that funding, if you like, and that is due to the administration component between KWY and us. That brings us in close proximity and working with an ACCO who has that excellent cultural expertise. We know Port Augusta is a place where there is a high population of Aboriginal people, and that's working really well. So that's something that we intend to do as a consortium, if you like, into the future, where the leadership, myself and Craig, gone, right, we're going to apply for this as a consortium as we move forward. And so where we lose a program, I never lose sight of the fact that our staff have done a great job, but policy keeps marching on, changes in the environment keep coming, and we have to be able to adapt to those. We'll tell you that, with the funding not getting any higher and the costs increasing and have been steady increasing for a long time, wages are going up, right? The cost of doing business has gone up. And so, these are things which have all shaped this strategic plan. And I do realize, so that's the pillars. And the next part of this process will be very much around getting your input into the organizational annual plan. That will happen. So we'll try and get that document done by probably the end of November so that we can take it to board for approval. So we're running late. What we'll do is we'll just extend the plan we've got on foot until we've got this one finalised and approved by board, and then we'll basically march to that tune. Now, I know I've been ranting for a while now, so I'm really keen to take any questions that anyone has. Now, if you haven't got any questions, and if you think of some, please let me know. But I'll tell you what I've been asked before, okay, in these sessions. And so, in my, I guess my interest for you to develop skills in using AI and AGI, such as Copilot, the question has come up. Look, we've got a net zero ambitions, and we know that data centers are key to the use of AI and AGI systems such as Copilot. And we go, well, what's the conflict there? So we know these data centers use a lot of water to help cool them down, okay? And water in this country is a precious resource. So how do we sort of reconcile and reconcile those two sort of conflicting challenges? Well, it's something I've been thinking about because the question came up in the first session. And so basically, as a director on the board, as a chief executive of this organization, I have to put the organization first, right? And so if we want to survive into the next generation and beyond, we need to use this stuff. There's no way around that. And so, yes, it may result in us using more water. I know that Microsoft are keen to make their systems net zero by 2030. We've had to slightly push back our ambitions to 2035 because we think we could quite get there by then. But I got to say, having seen the excellent work that all of you are doing in terms of ride sharing and so on, we've seen a dramatic reduction in the amount of petrol that we're using across the organisation, which in turn has its own benefit. One of the things about South Australia is that we are pretty much a green energy system, and most of our operations occur during the working day when these systems are on. Okay, so I feel is bad. We've got all of our stuff that used to be on servers sitting around our organisation in various places in a hodgepodge, which was disorganised and disappeared. All of our stuff is on the cloud now. And so that data centre that we operate from is South Australian, okay? And so it operates from the South Australian energy grid, which is largely green, and that is on track as well to be net zero by 2030. So in terms of that challenge, I get it. I really care for the environment. I think these net zero ambitions are absolutely key as a worldwide issue. But when I talk about this organisation, I have to wear my hat as a director and chief executive. And so we have to act in the interests of this organisation. Do we have any, has anyone thought about any questions, or do you have any comments or concerns? I'll take that as a no. What I will say, I've got a few minutes left. I will say I'm really keen to explore how each and every staff member of mine can put up their hand and be active participants in implementing this strategic plan. And so again, I encourage you, you can come to me directly, or you can do what will probably happen after that anyway. I'll generally have a chat with someone that has got some ideas, and that will start thinking in my head. We'll have a chat about what those next steps may be, and that is usually having a chat with their direct line manager in a safe space. And the other thing I wanted to emphasize, as we continue to develop our staff, and now that we have the structure that we're moving forward with, the supervision process which occurs is a safe place for you to explore your developmental needs. I would expect, and what happens, and with those that report to me, is that development occurs on 3 levels, okay? So part of that occurs in supervision, and whether you get a coaching or a mentoring framework is really about where you're at in your journey. Be open to that and work within it. The other part I really like is sending my team on independent learning as well. And that might be delivered by another provider who is doing the relevant course. And then, of course, the third aspect of that is to know yourself. Know yourself so you can know what challenges you might work on and how you can independently craft your own development. It does feel like I'm ranting a bit now. Trish.
Yeah, hi, Harry. I probably just, it's not so much of a question, but I just wanted to sort of just say that I'm really excited about this strategic plan, the way that it looks and the pillars. I think it's something new, which I hope everybody sort of embraces. I just wanted to touch on the pillar of innovation. Because like you said, Harry, we've got, up towards 400 staff. I think that some of the best ideas actually come from our frontline workers.
Absolutely agree.
And
yes.
it could be just a really little idea, and that little idea then sparks something bigger. So like Harry said, I just really urge everybody to have conversations with their inline manager, because you never know where that idea can take us. So, yeah.
Absolutely right, Trish. Yeah, everyone does their bit in this organisation at their level. Directors have got their piece. They govern the place. I've got to lead it. My executives have got to implement initiatives like this. But ultimately, where does it go? It goes to the front line. You guys are the ones who deliver the services that are so crucial for caring for country people. And so you do not ever underestimate your position in an organisation. Without you, we are nothing. So most not-for-profits got about 80% of their spend are on wages. That's the people. We're a people-centred organisation, and so everyone's got a voice in this place. Use it. We're really interested in hearing what you have to say. As I say, if you want to come to me first and hash out an idea, go for it. You want to go through the line? I think that's a better approach. But either way, we can do this thing. And whilst these are challenging times, I know from my experience working in this sector for close to 20 years now, we're an awesome organisation. We've got marvellous staff. We've got masses of services and funding contracts. We are in a really great position. Let's leverage off that and have a think about how you can see yourself as active participants in this organisational plan as we move forward and continue to keep this organisation at the forefront of where it should be. All right, so I think we've got about a minute to go. We're happy to take another question or comment if there is any. Otherwise, look, thank you so much for your time today. It's been really marvellous. Thanks. See you later.
Thank you.